All right, good morning and welcome. My name's Lori. I'm new to emceeing, so be patient, be kind. I'll be your MC today. I'm pleased to welcome those here to the Community Center and those joining on Facebook Live and YouTube to Kansas City Oasis. Since 2014, Oasis has been the premier secular alternative to faith-based communities. We welcome all, regardless of beliefs, non-beliefs, race, gender, sexual orientation, identity, or other trait. We feel the human experience is better when it's shared, and we are so pleased that you have chosen to share it with us this morning. We gather around our 5 core values. People are more important than beliefs. Reality is known through reason. Human hands solve human problems. Meaning comes from making a difference. And be accepting and be accepted. You can find those and more at kcoasis.org/our-philosophy. Today's speaker, we have a great program for you. Dr. Darrel, a regular here at Oasis. His talk on swipe left or swipe right, human mating patterns, and the future of humanity. Sounds dire. And our musical guest is Danielle ate the sandwich. First time, hopefully coming back multiple times for us. And then we'll have a community moment. We will not have a community moment today because Dr. Darrel Ray is going to go a little long. And our future presentation, his presentation will be in 2 parts. So I'd like to welcome Danielle ate the sandwich to KC Oasis. Combining soft lifting vocals and poignant honesty and wit, Danielle ate the sandwich writes songs from the biggest and smallest moments in life. A songwriter, ukulele and guitar player and performer, Danielle first found her place at open mic nights and coffee shops in Fort Collins, which I learned because that's where she went to college. And she has released 7 albums of original music and is about to release her 8th with over 200 YouTube videos. Please give a warm Oasis welcome to our Danielle making her first appearance.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Lori gave me a great introduction. I'll tell you more about myself as I play a few songs, but since Darrel is presenting on the future of humanity, I thought, why not go deep into my love life and perform a song for you called The Long Haul. It's cheeky, so if you are feeling like it's cheeky, follow that instinct. When the snow falls, will you be shoveling my driveway? Will you be coming in from the cold? Will your boots be drying in my foyer? In my foyer, in my foyer. When the day's done, you're gonna run out to the grocery store for some ingredients that I forgot to pick up, even though it probably could wait till tomorrow. No, it could wait. You know it could wait. Is this true? The bow breaks and you get a good peek at my true colors. All the little monsters and demons running all around the town, killing everything. Are you gonna pick me up, take me home, tuck me in and tell me I can do better next time? Is this true? Ooh, 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 love. Is this true? Ooh, 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 love. Are you gonna be with me for the long haul? The long haul. Is this true? Ooh, 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 love. Well, there are many things that I could learn from you, even if we don't make it the long haul. And I am well aware that nothing ever works out, but I'd be thrilled, oh so thrilled, if you were the exception. I'd be thrilled, oh so thrilled, if you were the exception. How do you feel about singing? Would you say sha-na-na-na-na, 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 oop, oop, again, sha-na-na-na-na, 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 oop. Let's do it again, it sounds great. Sha-na-na-na-na, 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 oop. I love it, you keep it going. Woo, keep it up. Yes, and my true ooh, 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 love. Sounds good, y'all. True ooh, 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 love. Let's do one more time. True ooh, 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 love. My true ooh, 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 love. That was great. Thank you so much for singing along. Sounds great. My name is Danielle, ate the sandwich. This is the stage name I chose for myself when I was just getting started performing music in college, not knowing it was a name I would own to in my life, in my career, on my taxes. But I kind of like it. There's not a big story behind it. I just picked. I picked it. I like food. Does anyone here like food and enjoy the goodness of food? Yeah. And to be honest, I like pizza a lot. I like spaghetti a lot. Yes, let's just clap for food. Food. And I settled on sandwich because it felt like a food that is kind of accessible to all. It comes in all shapes and sizes. It can be bougie, and it can also be very simple and comforting. And so Danielle Ate the Sandwich has become who I am, and it's a wing under which I perform original music and release albums. And I also have started doing comedy shows. Some of you mentioned seeing my Fringe show last summer, and I know Casey Oasis was a Fringe venue. So thank you for letting me share who I am and my creativity. I'd love to sing a song called The Universe to a bunch of atheists. Let's see how it goes. You might dig it, you might not. There are girls across the universe wishing in a well, but I got all I need right here. There are dogs all through the neighborhood aching for a bone, but I got what I need. The universe is big and wide, and when you least expect it, she provides. There are traffic guards and towers tall, telling planes to land, so you can make it safely on the ground. And there are satellites in outer space sending signals home, so I can call you later on the phone. The universe they might understand how good it feels when you touch me with your hands. And someday science might explain, compared to all the other souls, that you and I were meant the way we hoped. The universe is big and wide, and when you least expect it, she provides. The universe is big and wide, and when you least expect it, she provides. And all of this tumbling down has taught me I don't know anything, and I've learned my lesson, but I can't change the weight of the words when I'm speaking your name. There are girls across the universe wishing in a well, but I got all I need right here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was great. Today's birthdays. Stephanie Critterton. Woo-hoo-hoo. The 18th, Susan Nickel. Is Susan here today? Oh, Rowan Stewart on the 18th as well. And Andy Beals on the 19th. There's Andy. If you have any birthday announcements or celebrations, anybody want to speak up? Anybody? Some good news, please? Good? Something. I went and saw Mark Maron perform last night at the Midland. If you don't know Mark Maron, he's a comedian. He's been around for a long time. He was on Air America radio back in the early days. It was a liberal radio network for a little while, and then he has his podcast called WTF. So he had a lot to say, and he vented, and we appreciated listening to him vent. If you have something to celebrate, let us know. We need some assistance in difficult times. Let us know. Talk to somebody with a yellow name tag so we can celebrate or support you. We are your community. This Tuesday, February 18th, join us for happy hour starting at 5:30 p.m. at Lark's in the West Bottom. Happy hours are always a great time to hang out and socialize with fellow Oasians. Lark's offers shuffleboard and other games, along with an impressive lineup of food and drinks. So that's Tuesday the 18th. On February 23rd is the book club, and everybody's reading Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Described as a revolutionary in its candor, offering a deeply personal yet universal tour of our hearts and minds and providing the rarest of gifts, a boldly revealing portrait of what it means to be human. Sounds like a good book. Join our fellow Oasian readers after you read the book, of course, for a great discussion and snacks Sunday, February 23rd after our weekly meeting. The next game night is February 27th here in the Community Center from 7 to 9 for games and great times. Bring your favorite board games and snack to share. And it's time for spring community group sign up. This is where we meet in smaller groups for discussions and get to know folks in our community better. Most meetings are bi-weekly for 6 weeks. You can sign up to join a group today. The link to sign up is on the Facebook private group and on kcoasis.org under What's Happening or scan this lovely QR code. If you have any questions, contact Justine Flick. All right, we're getting ready for our speaker. Remember, our program is designed to generate conversation and engage our powers of reason, not as a forum to start debate. The following presentation has been prepared by our speaker and not by KC Oasis. Please respect the views of our speaker, and if you have any questions, save it for the Q&A to follow. So Dr. Darrel Ray has been a psychologist practicing counseling and clinical psychology, and then moved to organizational psychology and counseling. He's the author of multiple books. He's a public speaker, podcaster, and atheist activist, and founded the nonprofit organization Recovering from Religion, as well as the Secular Therapy Project. We have, it jumped a couple. Swipe left or swipe right? Welcome.
Which one are we doing?
You tell
Left
me.
or right?
Oh.
Thank you.
All swipe right for everybody.
Okay, we'll do. You sat on it? I sat on. Oh, now it's working. I sat on it. All right. Well, I'm not as smart as I look sometimes. Hey. Well, thanks for coming. And most important, thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk about something I find fascinating and something I don't think a lot of people are aware of. I'm guessing my audience here is aware of it much more than the average bear, but it's still a very complex subject with nuance. And my goal today is to not piss too many people off before we're finished. That's my goal. I'm not guaranteeing I can reach that goal. If you're interested in either of my books, Barb's back there will be happy to take your money for them. Today, we're going to be talking about something I think is very challenging, some ideas that are difficult to wrap your head around sometimes. And if it causes any anxiety or anger, which it might, I'm not saying it won't, just write it down and think about what you want to do with that information or that feeling. I'm not here to judge anybody. When we're finished, I want you to know I'm not making any claims about any choices anybody's made in their relationships or their life. It's not my purpose here today. So I have lots of questions. I don't think I've got many answers today. I've got some opinions. I'll be glad to share those at the end, though. So let me begin by talking about songbirds. Male songbirds, when they learn their song, which they have to learn in order to find a mate later in life, when they learn their song, they generally learn it from their father. Because the male father is hanging around, he's singing his songs, and obviously he's got a good song or that baby wouldn't have been born, right? You can see the connection between the song and the father. So I want you to keep this in mind. The baby songbirds learn their songs from their father, and they would have a hard time reproducing if they didn't know the right songs. Now, experiments have been done, some interesting ones, and multiple times, of transplanting male songbirds to other locations. When you take a songbird, the songs of songbirds are like dialects or languages. So if you take the songs of one area, they can be quite different from the songs from a different area. So you take this songbird, transplant them 500 miles away into a community of other songbirds, same species, he will not be able to sing the local songs. Hence, the females will not recognize his song, and he will have a hard time, if not make it impossible, for him to mate. He's got a good song. He learned the right one from his father, but it's not the one that's needed in this particular area. So I want you to keep that in mind as, whoa, that went I went somewhere I didn't want it to go. Can the males sing the right songs, and are females receptive to those songs? Keep this in mind. We'll come back and visit that a little bit later. So my first data, I'm going to throw a lot of data at you today, but the graphs are very self-explanatory, so I'm not going to stand around here and analyze all these graphs. I'm going to show them to you. If you want my slides, you can have them, and you can study them later. First thing I want to show is a graph of birth rate. This is birth rates for many, many countries, including China, United States, India, and what you can see here is it's plummeting. This is going clear back to the 1751, but you can really see, even in countries as large as China and India, population is starting to really, really decline. And you have to have 2.1 births per child in order to maintain a stable population. And biologically speaking, whether it's cicadas or dogs or humans, they 2.1. You got to have 2.1 births for every female births that survive, because, within humans, it's 2.1. Other species, it may be slightly different. But anyway, as you can see here, the replacement rate, where we're at right now, is 1.66 in the United States. We are having 1.66 births per woman. South Korea is down to 0.78. It is the lowest birth rate on the planet right now. But you can see Italy, China, Japan, even India is below replacement rate. Now, the population is still growing because people were born are still coming, in the population. But the babies are not being born to replace those people 25 or 50 years from now. So what is causing this decrease in fertility? And there's no one cause, but there are several hypothesized causes. Some are pretty obvious, some are not. But you got you got marriage, people are waiting to be married. People are waiting to have children. Some controversy around the third one here, sperm count. It seems like that may be a cause. It may not be. But also lower female fertility. Part of the reason female fertility may be going down is because of waiting to have children, and the window of fertility is going down. Widely available birth control, of course, and education of women. That's a big one. As we've seen over the last century, the more educated women get, the fewer children they have. It's just simple math. And of course, fewer people are just getting married, period. So there's also environmental factors, estrogen mimicking chemicals. It's very likely that some of the chemicals in our environment are affecting us. We know they affect fish. We know experiments all over the world have shown other species are being affected by these. Microplastics, electric lights, sleep cycles, all these things may be being disturbed and may affect our fertility and ability to reproduce. Screen time may be a problem. There's some evidence for that. Unknown effects of chemicals just generally in our environment. Is this a serious problem? My answer to that question is, I don't fucking know. It is not, I don't know anybody that really knows. I know a lot of people who've got strong opinions both ways, but it's an issue, and I'm going to use the term issue, because a problem implies it's bad, it has only negativity, and I'm going to say it may be good, it may be bad. We don't know. Jason and I were having a discussion before Eloisa started today, and we were talking about both issues. It really could be good that we're not populating this planet as much as we are. It also could be bad because the economy is probably going to go to crap because of that. So I don't underestimate the ability of humans to adapt. We've adapted to some pretty crazy stuff in our past. So who knows? We may find a way out of this. But clearly it's got short-term impacts on people like me. Social Security, I'm retired, I'm getting Social Security. Some of you who are soon to be retired, the whole Social Security system looks like, what's going to happen here. And of course, in the long term, what are we going to do in the next 50 years? Not the last 5 years, but the next 50 years. So that could all be issues to think about. And it could be serious problems for some portions of the population. This, however, is an interesting graph because it shows the birth rates, the marriage rates. And this is across the globe I've got a wide range of countries up here. Who is getting married? And I mean a formal marriage that's legally binding underneath whatever governing structure you live in. And you can see that is plummeting. It was up to 12 marriages per thousand in 1970 and 80, and it's now down to like 2.5. It's a huge, enormous change. And I'm going to emphasize this over and over again today. This is not happening just in the United States. This is happening in virtually every country on the planet. It's almost like we're all coordinating our reproduction here, and we're coordinating it very much down. This has led to some other consequences, and CDC and other organizations have examined some of this, and we're finding that people are not connecting like they used to. People have fewer friends. People have fewer family members. I have 3 brothers when I was growing up. Most people don't have 3 brothers or 3 siblings or anything like that size of a family any longer. So what we see is an increase in social isolation among people, especially in the United States. I'm going to focus that, obviously, on a little bit more than other countries. But every indicator of human connection shows a decrease in the last 20 to 30 years, especially since about 2000. So we're seeing this steady decrease in our ability to have connections. And men are especially being affected this because men have fewer and fewer friends. In fact, oh, darn, why is this going forward? I have, okay. So this is really affecting men in some ways that it's not affecting women as much because young men simply don't connect with other friends as much. Right now, 60% of all young men below the age of 30 single and have no interest in having any kind of romantic relationship. This is a gigantic change from 30 years ago. Gigantic. When I was a horny 18, 20, 25-year-old, that's all I could think about was girls, all right? That's pretty normal. So for people to tell me that 60% of 18 to 30-year-olds are no longer interested in women, that's almost incomprehensible from my 18-year-old self when I was that age. So, come on. All right. Now, how else is this affecting men? Well, suicide rates among men are 4 to 7 times, depends on where you look at the statistics, higher than women. Women attempt suicide more. Men achieve it more. And by a huge amount. We saw the loneliness epidemic was hitting men more than women, but it's hitting both men and women, as we'll see in a minute. In fact, it's so widespread that in China, they even have a term for what's going on in China. Suicide rates are high there for men, of course, but this notion of lying flat, that is, do as little as you can possibly get away with. That's what 34 million extra men. You remember that China had the one child policy. Well, it's coming back to bite them in the ass right now because they're dealing with 34 million men who will never find a mate because there simply aren't those women there. They're not out there anymore. And the Chinese government's very concerned about this. Do you want 34 horny, frustrated, angry men running around? Put them in the army. That's what usually countries do with their, quote, excess men. The natural birth rate for humans is about 105 to 100. 105 men, boy babies are born for every 100 women that are born. So generally speaking, this is not true of all populations, but generally speaking, populations have slightly more males than females among the species we call human. The same thing is going on in Japan. Only in Japan it's called hikikomori. If you speak Japanese, I'm sorry. That's the way it looks to me. And that's men living in their parents' extra bedroom, or they've never left their home from when they were a child. There's an enormous number of men in Japan that have never left their parental home. And it's a problem. And they're not even working. It's not like they're doing the minimum. They're doing nothing. They're living off their parents still. Another example of how it's affected men. The other thing is, and we see this mainly in the Western world, but especially in the United States, boys are being left behind in education. It's really it's really amazing how far behind boys and men are falling in the realm of education. I've got an entire talk. If you want to Google it, just look at incels and the boy crisis. I've done the talk a couple times. It's on YouTube. You can look at that. But I don't have time to go into that today. Now, how's this affecting women? Well, it's affecting women in this way. Antidepressant use among women has skyrocketed. And you can see here, men's use stayed roughly the same. It's bubbled around a little bit. Women's is twice as high. Antidepressant use twice as high as women. At least 20% of all women are on some kind of antidepressant. Well, you don't get on antidepressants if you don't have a reason for it usually. You don't get diagnosed with depression if you don't have depression. So something is going on. This is affecting women. I've focused on men a little bit earlier, but it's really affecting women. And it's affecting women in all countries. China, women who really, really want to find a male partner can't. Now, you would think you had 34 million extra men. Why can't you find a partner? Well, there's reasons, but I can't go into those. I don't have time today. But it's as common in China. Women cannot find a partner. And these patterns are starting to affect mating around the world, as I've said. Here's the United States divorce rate, and it is stabilized at roughly 50%. When in the 1920s or 30s it was 5 or 6%, and now it's up to 50%. That's an enormous change in a key mating pattern for humans. And if I could show you other countries, it's the same thing. Lots and lots of countries are experiencing massive amounts of divorce. Here's a headline that just this week, divorce rate skyrocketed after New Year's. Now, Chinese New Year's is a gigantic family holiday. And what happens, everybody went home for Chinese New Year for 2 weeks and got in fights and hated each other, and then they filed for divorce right after the holiday. At least that's what the article was talking about. China not only can you not find a mate, you can't, and people are not marrying as much, but now they're divorcing. Nobody's lined up on the marriage side of the building, but long lines we're seeing in the divorce side. Education, I mentioned that about boys, but if you look at this, boys are falling down, and women have exceeded by far where men are in education. 46% of women have a bachelor's degree between the age of 25 and 34. And that's continuing. This is as of 2021. That's just getting bigger and bigger all the time. Women are now exceeding men in every age group, every ethnic group in college and college education. Now, the social changes that have happened in the last 100 years that might have affected some of what we're just seeing, we can see here. We've got a lot of different things that have happened, from women's right to vote, to abortion, to no-fault divorce, to birth control. There's a lot of things that have happened in the last 100 years. And I think most of us, hopefully all of us, would agree those are all pretty damn good things. There's nothing wrong with any of that up there. But a change in a system causes other changes, and that's partly what we're going to explore today. In the last 10 years, we have seen, or even 5 years, a whole new raft of things come out. And I call these really little ideologies, or big ideologies, you could call them, I guess. But the Me Too movement, that had a huge effect on the way people perceive each other. And not in the intended way necessarily. MGTOW. I don't know I'm not going to go into all the details and definitions of all these things. You can look them up. But look up MGTOW, men going their own way. That's what MGTOW sounds like. Or the red pill, LGBTQ rights. Again, a lot of these things are darn good things. A lot of them are dangerous as hell and scare the shit out of me. I mentioned hikikomori in Japan, 4B movement. Women in Korea, the 4B movement. How many of you are familiar with 4B? Okay, some of you heard about that. Yeah. So women saying, I ain't going to touch a man, I'm not going to have sex with a man, I'm not going to have children, I'm going to marry. 4B, that's what it is. I don't know what the 4Bs are, just completely. Of course, we've got the same phenomena as hikikomori in the United States, and that's men living in their own parents' basement, and they're 30 years old, they're older than that, and still living under their parents' roof. And there's millions of men who are doing that. And roughly 80% of the people living in their parents' basements are men. Only about 20% are women. Women do it too. I'm not saying they don't, but it's quite a difference in the ratio. 50% of men under 30 say they're not actively pursuing any kind of relationship with women. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. But this is extremely low and doesn't bode well for where we're going as a species. So what we see here is there's a lot of evidence that it's getting harder and harder to find and maintain a long-term relationship, especially in the legal sense of a marriage. And I tell you, you get on, don't go down this rabbit hole. I got in this rabbit hole. I thought I was going down a few meters. I went down to the Marianas Trench. You can get sucked, as Barb will tell you, I've been sucked down this hole for the last 6 months. This talk has cost 6 months of my life to put together. But these Christians are saying, we got to find a good Christian man. So they have these Christian singles events and 300 women show up and 3 men. I mean, that sounds like heaven to me, but I would become a Christian if that. I don't know the results of those meetings. So a lot of women on YouTube and the internet are complaining, why aren't men approaching us anymore? What's going on? A lot of women wanting to get married, wanting to have relationships, and they can't find a man. So I'm going to show you why men are getting a little bit leery of this notion of getting married or dating. What if you knew that, would you date a woman if you thought your first date's clumsiness would show up on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook? Would you approach a woman if you thought there was any chance that she would call you a creep and post your face on Instagram? Would you approach or marry a woman if there was a chance that she would post your marital difficulties on TikTok? Get online sometime. You'll find hundreds of videos of women complaining about their husbands in all sorts of ways, totally disrespecting the people they supposedly are intimately involved with and have respect for. Would you show emotional vulnerability to a woman if you suspected she might use that information against you or post it on social media in the future? Would you marry a woman if you knew she would lose interest in sex within 5 years and then complain on social media about her husband wanting too much sex? All those things I have seen, and I've seen them multiple times. And I'm saying, if you're a single guy, you know what I'm talking about, especially if you're in the dating market. It is dangerous to be a man trying to date somebody who could post say anything they want to about you on the internet. And then what do you do about it? You have no defense. And that's where we are right now in the mating world. And this has been undermined, unfortunately, by social media. So let me see if I can get this to work. This is accidental right here. I did not put that up there. Do I hit the button again? Okay. Just listen to what this woman has to say. Oh, crap.
I take you, body.
That's not who can I hit it again, or is that?
And in health. Through good times.
I'll just skip it. Don't worry about it. Oh, I do too.
Rest of the single women out there. If a guy approaches you and for whatever reason you're not interested, you should not be hopping on social media to make fun of the dude or blast him in any way. It is irresponsible, immature, and childish. And most of all, it just makes you look stupid and bitter. As a dating coach for men, I see just how many men are no longer interested in approaching women because they're terrified of being put on blast on social. This should not be a fear of theirs, though it is a valid fear. If a guy approaches you and you're not interested, simply let him down easily and kindly and move on with your life. Because there are a ton of amazing single women out.
Okay, she's a dating coach. There's hundreds of dating coaches out there, and they all have terrible advice usually. But this woman had some pretty good advice. Don't go on a date and then disrespect the person that you went out with and put them all over social media. But why do we even have to tell somebody that? It seems like Obvious. Be respectful of other human beings. But that has been that's an enormous problem. Not because most women do it, because some women do it. Now, how do I know if I'm dating someone, if you're the one that's going to put me on social media blast or not? I have no way to know. So men just decide I'm going to back off. I'm not going to engage in this dating world anymore. As a species, we have something we practice called hypergamy, and it's kind of present in almost all species, but every species has its own specific way of practicing it. But it means that women prefer to marry up. They don't want to marry across or down. They want to marry up. And that's universal, and it's throughout history, and it's almost throughout all cultures. So they want to marry men who are taller than them. And when you ask a woman, how much taller does he need to be, women almost always say 4 to 6 inches minimum. So men who are less than 4 to 6 inches aren't even candidates. Women just eliminate those people, those males, from their mating pool. So right there we get a difficulty that women are going to experience. They want to marry or mate with men that make more money, that are higher status, that are older than them, better educated than them, and financially more secure than them. Now think about it. As women have increased in education, they've also increased in earning value. And by the way, women have actually gotten taller in the last 30 or 40 years. A little bit, not a lot, but more. So every time one of those things ratchets up more, it eliminates more men in the mating pool. It's a problem because average men are invisible to most average women. Average men are invisible to average women. And if you don't believe me, go on TikTok. Just get a profile on TikTok and experiment a little bit. What you'll see is women are going for the top 5 to 10% of men on TikTok and ignoring the bottom 90%. Men, there's lots of information on this. I don't have time to go into it, though. Now, once women do get married, they then are the ones that initiate divorce most often. Women, 70% of all divorces are initiated by women. If they're college educated, 90% of divorces are initiated by women. Clearly, these women are unhappy in the marriages, and I'm not disagreeing with that. And it's their experience. I'm not invalidating that. But they are the ones initiating the marriage, not men in most cases. And their second divorces are also initiated almost always by women. And the second divorce rate is 60% rather than 50% that we've seen before. 21% of all marriages are second marriages that both partners were married prior, and 70% of those are initiated by women. And what does this mean for the future of marriage? We're going to explore that a little bit. But interesting thing about this is what divorce rates look like. Among heterosexual couples, it's 50%, as we've already seen. Among lesbian couples, it's 72 to 78%. On gay couples, it's 25 to 28%. Now, the statistics on LGBTQ marriages like this have only been around for 10 or 15 years, but we've already got plenty of data. It's obvious that things are happening here. We don't know maybe the roots of them, but we can see something's going on. So what we've seen in the last 100 years or so is what we call social signaling, and that creates the normalization of a social phenomena. When you look around and you see everybody getting divorced, it kind of normalizes divorce. When my grandmother got divorced in I won't go into that story, but my grandmother got divorced. And it was a socially very, very difficult time because of that. Everybody thought she was a harlot, a whore. She was doing horrible things, of course. She got Jesus shortly after that, so that was okay. And that's a whole nother story. But think about it. In 1920, 1930, getting divorced was a major big deal. Today, it's like, yeah, we got it last week, no big deal. I'll find another husband tomorrow or another wife the next week. And so it's become socially normalized. It's called social signaling. We see social signaling all the time because people are always looking around saying, how should I behave in this culture, in this society at this time? And it normalizes things like divorce. And once a social signal is established in a population, it rarely goes back to its previous setting, so to speak. So now that we've reached 50%, half of all marriages are ending and divorce, it ain't going back. We're not going to go back to the 1930s or 1950s even. You see these videos. This is a video of a guy talking about why he'll never get married. He's got an entire YouTube dedicated to why he's not going to get married. That seems a bit over the top for me. And this is a world-famous divorce lawyer. He helps billionaires get their divorces. And he has a whole YouTube channel devoted to this. If you want to understand what's going on in our culture, he's actually one of the better ones. I mean, whether you agree with everything he says or not, he's dealing with people every day that are encountering divorce. So what we can say pretty clearly is that marriage and relationships in general have really, really changed. There are fewer people engaging in traditional marriages, and men are avoiding formal marriage. It's going down a lot. But at the same time, gay marriage is a fact, polyamory is a fact, open marriages are a fact, and wealth polygamy is a fact. You probably never heard that term before because I made it up. But wealth polygamy basically is Elon Musk. You know, he's got like 12 kids with 3 different women, and how many women is he sexually engaged with at any one time? I would say minimum 3, but I don't visit his bedroom. I can't say for sure. Oh my gosh, this thing keeps going ahead on me. So anyway, so that's wealth polygamy. But that's common. King Solomon had 300 wives and concubines. David had all sorts of wives. You know, we've seen it in history. It's not a new thing. High status, high power men can attract women in non-monogamous relationships. That is not new. We've seen that for centuries. There are more children being born to single women, and that is an effect on our marriage and mating pattern. Here's, in 1940, 4% of children were born to single women, 22% in 1980, and 40% are being born to single women now into one-parent family homes. Now, the thing is that single mothers still want sex and they still want companionship. So what are we going to do with that? We don't really have a way. You know, in our culture, we shame women for having, or we used to. We don't shame them as much as we used to. But those people still want relationships. Well, what kind of relationship is available to a single mother? And here is children born in other countries. Look at all this. Everybody except Japan has seen a gigantic increase in children born to single-parent families. And of course, there's the response of the religious right. They came out with the Project 2025. They want to put the genie back in the bottle. They want to make sure we go back to 1950s and women don't have birth control and women can't get abortions and you have to stay married even if you don't want to and make divorce really hard like they have in Louisiana. That's their answer to this, quote, problem. Now, that's why I call it issues. I don't call any of these problems. They're issues. And we have to decide if they're a problem or not. And oftentimes, personally, we're going to have to decide on this. But this has real-world consequences, folks. This is where men are voting versus where men are voting. According to very different countries, from Korea, U.S., Germany, United Kingdom, men are getting more conservative in their voting patterns. Women are getting more liberal in their voting patterns. The men that voted for Obama in 2008, or the age group that voted, male age group, 18 to 30 years old, who voted for Obama, voted for Trump this year. That is an enormous shift. Men are getting more conservative, women are getting more liberal. So it's consequential for us, but it's consequential for people in Germany. It's consequential for people in Korea. And there's also loud voices. You've probably seen stuff about Andrew Tate. He is a Class A #1 asshole. But Andrew Tate is really big into basically shaming women for being what he doesn't think they should be. He would love us to go back to the I think he'd like us to go back to the 1850s, personally, the way he talks. But he's been kind of one of the leaders in what's called the manosphere. and encouraging men to go their own way. He talks about the red pill, the black pill, the blue pill, the green pill. I don't know how many pills they've got these days. Every time I look at it, it changes. They add another pill. But these folks like Andrew Tate are really pushing fear and anger among young males who cannot find a partner, or young males who are fearful of dating women who might put them on social media or blast them on social media. So they're just taking advantage of a real anxiety that exists in our culture, in our world right now. So there's real interesting sexual politics going on. Young men, as I said earlier, swung towards Trump like was totally unexpected 12 or 14 years ago. Now there's messages coming out of these two camps, the liberal and the conservative. I couldn't list all of them, but here's just some of the ones that come to mind first. Liberal messages, and these have been strong in the liberal sphere, I guess you could say, is that men are toxic, men are flawed, men are innately wrong, men are predators. No matter who they are, because you're a male, you're a predator. I've heard, get on YouTube, you can find all sorts of third wave feminists basically saying all men are predators. And people saying we don't need men. Okay, and then men are too intimidated by women to marry them. So now they're blaming men for why they won't or can't get engaged or married to someone. That's the liberal messages. On the conservative side, you hear these messages. Women are feminizing men. They're expecting men to be more like them, more like women. Women are taking on masculine roles in the culture. Women don't respect what men do in society anymore. Marriage has far too much risk of divorce. That's what even conservatives are saying, that the one that wants you to get married are also saying now it's too risky, don't get married. There's lots of conservative sites that appear to be pro-marriage and anti-abortion and even anti-birth control are saying men shouldn't get married. I mean, it's schizophrenic in some ways. That they're trying to have both their cake and eat it too here. I thought we cured this problem. There we go. Women are more interested in money than relationships. Men are not attracted to masculine women anymore. The notion of boss babes, it's been pretty strong in some sectors of our society lately. So I call these sexual ideologies. An ideology promises to tell you how the world works, but most ideologies are just plain wrong. And these are all sexual ideologies that are trying to tell us how we should and shouldn't relate to people, who's right, who's wrong, who can we blame, who's innocent victims for whatever the latest patriarchal or matriarchal or feminist ideologies that are coming out right now. What I see in these two is they're both remarkably puritanical, which is kind of interesting. They're so puritanical that whether it's the MGTOW people, if you watch some of the videos on the men's rights or manosphere, they're basically saying women have no right to express themselves sexually. And in this whole notion of body count, I mean, it's just hilarious sometimes, and serious and scary, how oppressive, how masculine, how patriarchal the conservative side is. And their solution to the problem is put women back in the box and make them 1950s housewives again. Come on, what's going on here? So, and on the feminist side, you hear people saying, we don't need men anymore. We're not going to have sex anymore. The 4B movement in Korea. So on both sides are just throwing grenades at each other and then wonder why we can't find mates, why we can't connect. So both of them seem to ignore a very small detail, and that is human sexuality. Women have sex drives. Men have sex drive. Women and men want to both bond and connect with each other. But both these ideologies seem to ignore the basic biology of us as a species. And they really tend to blame and judge each other. It's like watching people fight that have no understanding of what the underlying causes are. So how do we interpret this data? We interpret it this way. It's two cats whose tails are tied together, and they are going to fight each other. They're not going to fight the person who tied their tails together. And what I'm going to do when we come back after a break, the coffee break, I'm going to talk about what is the underlying cause of all this. This is not a United States problem. It's not a patriarchal problem. It's not a feminist problem. It is a global problem or issue. I should stop using my word I said I wouldn't use. So we're going to listen to a song, not as we go to coffee break, we're going to listen to a song, and I think some of you will know this song, but what I want you to do is listen to the words, and, get your coffee and listen to the words, because the words are going to prep us for the second half of this talk. Thank you. Ooh, my water.
Let's welcome back. Danielle ate the sandwich for another song. Remember, there is a cash tip jar there. She has her Venmo at Danielle's Magic. Make a donation. So Danielle, where and when are you performing next?
My CD release show, I'm releasing a new album called Fumbling in March, and I get the opportunity to perform at Greenwood Social Hall on March 29th for a very special CD release show.
Okay, so everybody go to her Facebook page and like her and keep an eye on her events. And go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. Hey, thanks so much for being so nice. It's if I could give you all a lot of compliments, but nice, kind, authentic are ones that spring to mind. It's so refreshing to walk into a room with people who are open and eyes are connecting. I've gotten to meet so many of you, so thank you for being nice to me on my first time here at KC Oasis. I did kind of review my inventory to see what songs would be thematic, and I don't know how this one exactly fits in to Darrel's presentation. I am releasing a new album, and I have a lot of songs about grief, about losing people, about losing my family members. So maybe this one really isn't funny, but maybe on sort of the bluer note of how we're all gonna die someday. Sounds like y'all are looking forward to it. I need to bury my dad. He died a few years ago. A global pandemic swept through the lungs of the planet's soul. So we couldn't get together with family, caught in the obligations of living. And I made excuses that I learned from you, like winter can be so goddamn cruel. But it's been 2 summers past, and I could have already driven there and back. Since we were kids, they said it would happen. So me and my sister figured it would. But inside acceptance, I run a circle, caught in the feelings of being so old and so young. And I'm writing poetry and nodding my head when somebody talks about grief. Well, civilizations made up the rituals for mourning and moving on from death. So I might know how 1,000 years later, how in the world to lay your body to rest. And I'm writing poetry and nodding my head when somebody talks about grief. In the painting of the pine trees on the hillside where you named me, on the wind we spoke your memory, and the tall grass touched our knees. Part of me can still hear you laughing when the earth shook from the sound of the cannon. ashes to ash in the hills of Nebraska. You have been returned to dust. And I'm writing poetry and nodding my head when somebody talks about grief. I'm writing poetry and nodding my head when somebody talks about grief.
Wow. Thank you, thank you. Well, let's welcome back our guest speaker, Dr. Darrel Ray, for part 2.
I'm on, aren't I? Good. So what initially interested me in this subject was I see so much pain from women and men who want relationships and are, for all the reasons we've just seen here, not able to establish something meaningful and long term for them. So that's what initially got me involved in this. I've been single and married myself. I've been on both sides of the coin as well. So as you listen to that song, did you hear any, you heard the word hooked on a feeling? B.J. Thomas, the song, I'm addicted to you. We're getting some feedback here. Lips, sweet as candy. Any chance there's any hormones going on? Yeah, that guy is talking about a hormonal response to a partner that he's singing about. And we're gonna think about that as we go through this second half of my talk. So there's been a massive change in our mating behavior, and it's not random and it's not accidental. And I've got a different angle than what you heard the first half. The first half was this fight, this anger, this upset that people are, and you hear it throughout the media. But I think there's some new ways and different ways to look at this, because I think we're somewhat victims of the person that tied our tails together, our cat tails together. We're fighting each other rather than dealing with the underlying issues. Uh-oh, what happened here? I'm back on. Okay, on again, off again. I think this is a biological response. It's not just social. I don't think people suddenly became immoral or lost their compass or any of that kind of stuff. I don't think women divorcing at 70% means that they don't know, they don't have a moral compass anymore. I don't think the fact that men and women cheat has anything to do with morality oftentimes. In fact, I want to throw morality out because it really underlines something else I want to explore. But we've got all these statistics, and I've shown you tons of statistics here today. And what is the underlying issue? You see these ideologies, all these ideologies here, whether it's feminist ideology, masculinist, Christian, Mormon, Muslim, you name it, including socialism, including capitalism, every one of these isms tries to tell us what we can and can't do with our body, what we should and shouldn't do in relationships, whether we should or shouldn't buy a Valentine's card, and that's capitalism, by the way, the Hallmark card stuff, the Disney stuff, all of that are just little ideologies that are trying to tell us how to live our lives and how to have relationships with other people. So I think we greatly underestimate the influence of biology on our behavior. I am not a determinist. I'm not here to say the only thing is hormones. I am here to say that we really underestimate how much hormones affect us in our everyday life. Because we have this illusion that we have freedom of choice and freedom of movement and free speech and free, when in fact, a lot of times something's going on inside of us that's pushing us one way or the other, biologically. So I call these romance hormones, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. When you fucking fall in love you lose control. I mean, if you've ever done it, you know how many stupid mistakes, how many stupid decisions you can make when you're in love. How many of you made stupid mistakes while you were in love with somebody? Oh my gosh. Okay, there we go. I will raise my hand twice on that one. So what these hormones do is they're really effective at getting us to pair bond and stay pair bonded long enough to wean the child. And the research is pretty strong in this, even going back to hunter-gatherer societies. Lots of hunter-gatherer societies, for example, the Hadza in Africa, marriages last about 5 to 7 years. So the hormones really keep people together for about that long. And then all bets are off after that. We even have a term for it. It's a 7-year itch that somebody came up with back in 1954. And Marilyn Monroe probably got a good check out of that particular movie. But I'm going to say that romance is simply a hormonal response, a cultural interpretation of a hormonal response. Because there's a lot of cultures on this planet that don't have romance. It's not a part of their culture. And so it's a Western concept. It's not a concept in other parts of the planet. I don't think there's any shame in being a human being. And I don't think there's any shame in having hormones that affect us, because that's the way we function. That's how we mated for millions of years. We mated based on our hormones. But ideologies tell us what we should be. Biology tells us what we are. And it's hard to deny that our biology is super powerful. Nobody would get married probably if it wasn't for lust. And what is lust? But infatuation, a hormonal response to a connection that we made with another human being. And that's great. Our ideologies tell us we shouldn't be doing or should do or what we should do. Think about it. If you're a Christian, that's a Christian ideology. It has a whole ideology around what mating and marriage should be. Historically, most ideologies suppress women's sexuality. I mean, it really clamped down on women's sexuality. You just read the Bible, you can see how scared, horrified people are, or especially the patriarchal system of the Old Testament and New Testament was of female sexuality. It's scary if you're a Christian that women might have agency around their own sexuality. And that's where a lot of ideologies go. But I see a massive crack in our culture. And I don't think European culture, I don't mean American culture, I mean world culture. We're seeing a gigantic crack in world culture, and through that crack is coming women's sexuality. And they're expressing themselves in ways that have never been allowed in the history of the planet in almost all cultures. There's a few, like the Moso in China, they clearly have got very liberated women, a very liberated approach to women in that particular culture, but very few cultures have this. And this crack is showing, whether it's China or India, the United States, Germany, it doesn't matter. And it's all around the globe. So I think there's some future challenges here. Because I personally enjoy having a solid long-term relationship. I think I do better as a human being if I'm in relation to someone else. And I've seen lots of people say the same thing. So I have some opinions. I'm going to go through 7 of them right now. First is that traditional marriage simply isn't working. If it were working, then the majority of people would be happy within that institution. But what we see is half of the marriages end, 50%. Then you take the 50% of the marriages that are still intact, half of those marriages are miserable. The other half enjoy their marriage, but half of the 50% are miserable. My grandparents, both sides, were married for over 50 years. They were still married when they died. And I can't think of 4 more miserable people on the planet than my 4 grandparents. They died hating each other. And yet they were very proud that they got their 50th wedding anniversary plaque and celebration and party and all that sort of stuff. So I think we can agree that 75% of the people, marriage is not working for them. Or at least the form of marriage that we have been taught from our predominantly Christian culture here in the West. liberation of women has had unintended consequences for men. And we really can't ignore that because we can see men are getting more conservative and voting for people like Trump. So we're having to deal with misogynistic asshole leadership from the White House because of the direction men have gone in their own voting. And it's happening in Germany too. It's happening in the United Kingdom. It's the voting pattern I showed you earlier is pretty strong across all those things. Now, I don't like it. I'm not endorsing it. I'm saying it's a good thing. I'm saying it's a thing. And you just ignore it is not going to make it go away. So we have to start thinking, what's going on here? Why are men voting more conservative, and why are men getting less education? Why are men checking out of society in Japan, in China, and Korea? These are real interesting and important questions to think about. Social media and dating apps, they are really screwing up our culture. Dating apps, and the research is showing this, dating apps are designed to keep you single. They purport to help you find a mate, but almost nobody is getting married through dating apps anymore. And women are getting off dating apps, men are getting off of dating apps because they're finally figuring out the dating app wants to keep you single so you'll keep using the dating app. If you don't keep paying your fees, especially men have to pay fees on those dating apps, then you're SOL as a corporation. It's not a good business model to give your services away to people who are going to use them and then leave. You want to keep them engaged. So men are backing off pursuing relationships, and women are ignoring most of the men that are on the dating apps. The research shows that the top 5% of men on the dating apps get almost all the likes or matches, and the bottom 95% get almost nothing. And I think this is an interesting piece that nobody's talking about, I don't think, and that is the social pressure on our former mating system has gone. It's evaporated. As I said, in the 1920s when my grandmother got divorced, there was a lot of social pressure to keep people from getting divorced. It was hard to get divorced. It was expensive. It was socially undesirable. You could get ostracized by your family and such. So what we've seen is a release of that pressure. When you release pressure on something, it gives that thing, whatever that is, the opportunity to find its own level, to get to do what it wants to, or naturally, rather than what the culture was trying to force on it. Now, we still see that pressure in Saudi Arabia, where women have to walk around in hijabs and chadors, and they can't be who they really want to be. But when you release that pressure, as was done in Sweden about 40 years ago, you see female behavior in Sweden change dramatically. In fact, if you want to know more about that just look at my talk on the social sexual orientation. I did it several years ago, but it's really interesting to see what happens when the social pressure is released, mainly to women's sexuality. It doesn't change men's expression of sexuality nearly as much as it does women. So it's a clear demonstration that the change of pressure, it's like if you dive down in the ocean, you get more and more pressure, and the bubbles are small that come out of your air-breathing device, but when you go up, the bubbles get bigger and bigger because the pressure is off. And that's kind of what we're seeing in women being able to express themselves, get an education, earn their own income, have a credit card. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when my wife, I got married in 1970, my wife could not have a credit card without my permission. I'm just saying, that's bizarre. It's crazy. But if you weren't living in that time, you wouldn't realize just how different things are now. So I think what I would suggest is we really need to, this has both positive and negative consequences for men and for women. But what we need to do is look at the underlying issues that are causing this and examine our ideological beliefs, because I'm guaranteeing every one of us in here have bought into some kinds of ideologies. Remember, ideologies are a way to tell you how the world operates, and they're almost always wrong. Whether you call it communism or capitalism or socialism, masculism, MGTOW, feminism, I don't care. All of them are purporting to tell you how the world really works. And I'm here to say there ain't no ideology on the planet that tells you how the world works. It may have a piece of the truth, but it doesn't have all of it. Christianity thinks it has all the messages and all the answers. So does Islam, so does Buddhism, so does Judaism. So Number 5, we are biological creatures. And our bodies are designed to respond to the mating for about 7 years. That's why we have the 7-year itch, by the way. That is now documented. It wasn't in 1954 when the movie came out, but since that time we've determined that the magic seems to wear off about 7 years. And that's when divorce peaks among us as a species. And lots of, if you ever want a good book to read, go read the book, The Myth of Monogamy by Barash and Lipton. And they blow the myth out that there are monogamous species. There are almost no monogamous species on this planet. And species do get divorced. I mean, other species do exactly like we do because we are biological creatures. So hormones drive us towards together. But what, as a psychologist, and I've done marriage counseling, I've done all sorts of therapy with people. The question is, you got two people who are madly in love with each other. They can't keep their hands off of each other. And 7 years later, if you gave them a gun, they'd shoot each other. What happened? What happened to that incredibly loving? They were posting all sorts of things about how much they love each other on Facebook or Instagram. And now they're posting, I'm glad they don't give guns to me because I'd kill my husband or I'd kill my wife. That's an enormous change. And I'm going to suggest it's hormonal. That the hormones switched off, and you wake up one day and you look at your partner and say, whoa, what happened to that good feeling I used to have? I'm not saying we don't have control over our hormonal responses. I'm saying we don't have as much as we think we do. So I think this is liberating. If you think about it, it can be quite liberating when you realize, oh shit, it's not because my partner's an asshole or a jerk. It's because my hormones changed, and I started looking at the world through non-hormonal eyes or different hormonal eyes. Things start happening. So I think if we could start, it's so hard for partners to be honest with each other oftentimes. And I've seen this over and over again in therapy. I'll bring a woman or a man into my office, talk to them alone. We'll identify the problem. I'll say, have you talked to your partner about, I could never talk to my partner. Well, why not? They would divorce me if they knew that. Yeah, so we're going to have to hide these things from each other rather than trying to figure out, do we want to maintain a beautiful, supportive, long-term relationship, or maybe we need to dissolve the legal part of this marriage and go our separate ways in some other way? How are we going to deal with our kids and raise them in a way that's respectful and helpful to them? These are questions that we could actually ask if we stop looking through the hormonal eyes that I think every damn pop culture song tries to push on us, that love is forever. And I hope it is forever for you, because 25% of us humans can have love forever. And I think that's wonderful. But what do the rest of us do? What are the other 75% of us in this world going to do? Is a midlife crisis a moral failing for men or women? When the woman wakes up at 40 years old and says, I don't think I want to be in this marriage anymore, is that a moral failing? When the man decides, I'm going to go buy a Porsche and not tell my wife about it and then file for divorce next year, is that a moral failing? No, I think it's hormones talking. Frankly, I think it's a developmental cycle. Humans have not lived this long in history. We're now living longer. So maybe there's some developmental cycles we didn't know were there. And I think for some people, they go through changes. They come, whether you want to call it an existential crisis, I don't know, but no matter what you call it, existential crisis, midlife crisis, I'm going to say it's a hormonal crisis. Because you like the drugs and you ain't getting them anymore. I've had people say, I love my husband, I love my wife, but I sure do miss the excitement of that first 2 years we were together. What do I do with that? Well, that's a good question to ask. It's a good question to out loud ask yourself, and maybe a therapist if you need to, maybe your spouse. I love it when people have long-term lasting relationships. I just don't think it's possible for a large percentage of people, or they don't have the skills to do it. That's another thing. Skills do influence hormones. So, mating is not a moral thing, it's just biology. And with reduced cultural pressures, My grandparents stayed married for 50 years, not because they liked each other, not because the hormones were floating, but because of the social pressure. Other species, we see the same thing in other species, even ones that are so-called monogamous. And we've got words for it in our world. We got 7-year itch, we got midlife crisis. So we know it's happening. We know what's out there. We just don't know how to apply it to ourselves. And we don't know good psychological ways to deal with these deep questions that all of us are going to encounter if we want to be in a relationship long term. Could midlife crisis be a developmental stage? I haven't seen any research on it, but I'm thinking it probably is. There's probably something going on there that's not just people becoming immoral all of a sudden or not being committed to their marriage anymore. And anyway, so seventh is the status of women. When you change a system so dramatically as increasing the status of women in 100 years to full or even different equality, I told you earlier, women are blowing men away in the education area and money earnings. In fact, black women and white women are almost equal in education now. However, white men and black men are going down. Black men especially have gone down a lot in the last 20 years, much lower educational achievements. So we've got a huge change in a system. Well, when you get a huge change in one part of the system, that means the rest of the system is going to be affected. And I said, we're seeing that. The changes in China, the changes in Japan, those are enormous changes. I don't know where they're going to end up. I don't have any magic crystal ball or anything, but I will say that it's going to be different. 50 years from now, we're going to have different mating patterns than we do now. And hopefully, we'll find ways to be more kind to each other, and divorce won't be such a horrible experience. I mean, I was lucky in my my personal divorce, where we were amenable. We were able to do pretty well. We didn't use lawyers. We used a mediator, which I highly recommend a mediator. But all my friends, by the time I was 40 years old, almost all of my friends, except one couple, had been divorced. And they had such horrible fights and battles, and the kids suffered, and everybody hated each other, and they won't speak to each other even today. That was 30 years ago. So there's no reason for us to be like that to each other. And if we start realizing that we are biological creatures and this has been pushed on us through some ideologies, then I think we can be kinder and we can be less angry and push people around and condemn them and say, you're a jerk. I loved you like nobody on the planet 10 years ago, and now you're the worst person on the planet now. That's just a crazy mindset. And it can only be driven by some ideas that are dysfunctional, I think. So I have no idea where we're going to go with this, but I do know, and I've already heard, because some of you came up to me during the coffee break, some of you have children. You yourself are experiencing this. You know people who are. And I hope that this talk here today has given you some ideas about what they might be going through. If you've got a grandchild, if you've got a child who's going through this, maybe you can help them understand that this is kind of biological. It's not just social. And how much do you believe in this Christian notion that X, Y, or Z? Or how much do you believe in this Mormon idea about marriage? I hope everyone in here stays happily engaged, whether you formally married or not. I really do, because I think human beings do best when they're bonded to one another. And in whatever configuration you want, I don't care. I'm not anti-marriage. I'm anti-being hateful to each other in the process of forming or breaking apart a relationship. And I know some of us in here are therapists, and we've seen the damage that does. And it's just, there's no reason. There's no rational, logical reason for it. So ultimately, all these messages, we get bombarded by all sorts of social media. I was talking to somebody at the break, and they were talking about all the noise around relationships. And I agree, there's tons of noise out there. And you've got to learn to ignore some of that, or you're not going to be able to find a relationship that's fulfilling for you and your partner. And the noise can interfere with relationships. So let's understand, what you listen to, what you consume, what you watch can really affect you. I'm telling you, I have watched all these damn YouTube channels I've been showing you. I can get really angry sometimes watching some of this YouTube shit. But it doesn't matter whether it's a male side or a female side. I can get angry from both sides. And that tells me there's something else going on. When both sides angry at each other, look at the underlying root cause. So that's my thoughts for today. I hope this gives you some thoughts. I wonder how this relates to our songbird. Can we still hear each other's songs? Can men sing the right songs? Can women receive those songs? I think that's kind of where we're at right now. We have changed the environment so much, the songs may not be working any longer. So how do we change that or improve on it? So thank you. I appreciate your attention today. Happy to.
Thank you so much. We're going to skip questions. If you have any questions for the doctor, you can hit him up out in the lobby. While our musician comes back for her final performance, I want to remind everyone that Kansas City Oasis is a 501c3 nonprofit run solely on donations and volunteers. If you like the topic and the music today, please consider donating through kcoasis.org/donate or by Venmo. Ta-da! Recurring monthly donations help us budget future projects, so consider a monthly donation or a regular donation. Welcome back, Danielle, back to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you. My last song is the title track of my new album, again, that's going to release in March. It's called Fumblin', and I think it is a good song to summarize Darrel's talk, where I am in my life and where we might feel like we are in the world. There's so much going on and there's so many choices to make, and I feel lucky to have the privilege of choices. I know that's not the same for everybody else, but this song is kind of about how just when I think I got the hang of it, another thing happens and I'm starting completely from scratch. So hopefully, you ever feel like you have no clue what's going on? Anybody out there? So this song is for us. It's called Fumbling, and trying to remember to celebrate that. Where I come from, opportunity means too much to me to decide where I finally wanna go. Got so many homes, can't tell where I belong. And the doors are open, but nobody's lights are on. Everything is wild, everything is fine, everything is moving along just as it ought to be. And it's a heartbroken, lonely kind of wandering to be so elegant in all of my fumbling. Well, I've been outsmarted, I've been outstretched, climbing ladders to change light bulbs that I burnt myself. I proved it in the past. I can find a place in the uncomfort of the strength it took to learn my name. And everything is wild, everything is fine, everything is moving along just as it ought to be. And it's a heartbroken, lonely kind of wandering to be so elegant in all of my fumbling. I made a living out of feelings, and I wore the heart out of my sleeves. Nobody's gonna teach you how to fall. Here I am stumbling, bumbling, making the best of it all. climbing ladders to change light bulbs that I burnt myself. I proved it in the past. I can find a place in the uncomfort of the strength it took to learn my name. But everything is wild, everything is fine, everything is moving along just as it ought to be. And it's a heartbroken, lonely kind of wandering to be so elegant in all of my fumbling. I'm so elegant in all of my fumbling.
Thank you again, and hopefully we'll all go to that CD party, release party. Okay, so today we're going to go to lunch at the Tower Tavern, 401 East 31st Street. So if you want to continue the conversation, please head on over there after today's meeting. And don't forget, look around you. Did you drop anything? Did you have any trash you need to pick up? There's all other ways to volunteer with KC Oasis. If you want to sign up for volunteer opportunities, go to the website on the private page. Next week, our featured speaker will be Valerie Mendoza, Beyond Brown, Mexican Struggles for Equality Before and After Brown versus Board. Our musical guest will be Z_, and the community moment will be Ron Runke on Black History Month. We want to thank again this week's presenter, Dr. Darrel Ray. Thank you, Doctor. And thank again, Danielle ate the sandwich. And thank everybody for tuning in online, and we will see you next week. Thank you.